Have you ever felt like something inside you is falling, and you're not sure if you'll be able to get back up? Like you're sinking in silence without a sound, but inside everything is screaming for help. Sophia knew that feeling. She didn't know exactly when it started. Maybe it was gradual, like a crack slowly spreading until it breaks everything. But that Memorial Day, she didn't go to the cemetery just to honor someone she never met. She went because she needed to find herself. The sky was overcast, but it wasn't raining. There was a sacred stillness in the air, like even the wind respected that place. Every step Sophia took among the gravestones felt heavier than the last. In her hands she held a red poppy, the symbol of memory, resilience, and pain passed down through generations. It had been years since she'd been back there, and deep down she didn't really know why. Something inside her just said she needed to go. The National Cemetery felt like another world. Rows upon rows of names carved into white marble. Stories that ended too soon. Dreams cut short by a higher calling. Sophia walked slowly, reading some names, pausing in front of others. She didn't know anyone there, except one. And even then, it was like she didn't really know him. Her great-grandfather had died in World War I, long before she was born. In the family, he was a name of honor, a hero spoken of with pride during Christmas stories. But that's all he was. A sepia-toned image in a dusty picture frame. But that day he was more than a memory. He was the only link she had to something bigger than the pain she was feeling. Sophia knelt in front of his gravestone. Her fingers touched the cold letters on the stone, as if searching for some hidden meaning there. She stayed silent for a few minutes, unable to pray, unsure what to say. She just let the tears fall quietly, like they didn't want to disturb anyone. Great-grandpa, I know you never came back, but I'm trying to come back from a hard place too. Can you help me somehow? She said it softly, almost a whisper, like she was talking to the wind. But something about that gesture seemed to open a door. A memory, maybe. A connection she didn't yet understand. She looked around, searching for some answer in the gray sky or in the flowers left by other visitors. But when she looked down again, she noticed something odd. At the base of the tombstone, partially buried in dirt and tiny dry leaves, there was something that didn't belong there. Carefully, she brushed the debris aside. It was an old medallion, darkened by time. Next to it, leaning against the stone, was a folded yellowed envelope with her name written by hand. Sophia. The shaky yet steady handwriting looked like it had crossed decades just to reach her. Her heart raced. She looked around as if trying to figure out if this was real. Who could have left that there? And why? What was inside that envelope? If you were in her shoes, would you open it? Sophia's hands trembled as she held the envelope. It felt like every fold of that aged paper carried a piece of time, of history, and of a truth she didn't yet know. She sat down on the grass beside the gravestone, the medallion in her lap, the envelope firm between her fingers. The silence around her grew even thicker, like the world had paused to witness what she was about to discover. She took a deep breath before opening it. The paper inside was yellowed, but well preserved. And the handwriting, firm, careful, looked like someone desperately wanted those words to arrive intact. At the top of the page, the date, 1917. And just below, a line. For anyone who one day needs to remember where they came from. Sophia read silently, but every word echoed inside her like an ancestral whisper. If I fall, don't cry for me as if I was defeated. I chose to give of myself. I chose to be here to protect what I believe in, even if it costs me my future. If my hands close forever, it's only because I once opened them in love. She paused for a moment, pressing the letter to her chest. It was like she could hear his voice. With each line, a piece of the puzzle in her heart started to fit together. I don't know if you'll ever read this, but if you are, I want you to know. It wasn't the absence of fear that brought me here. It was the courage to keep going despite it. The faith that even in dark times, something greater still guides our steps. Sophia couldn't hold back the tears. It wasn't just a letter. It was a mirror. He had written about trenches and bullets, but it felt like she was reading about her own soul, lost in an invisible battlefield, fighting a silent war every day. Fear of failure, of letting people down, of being just another forgotten name. And yet, there was that letter, crossing a century just to reach her in the moment she needed it most. As if it had been saved with a purpose. As if he knew. Memories of childhood rushed in. Her grandmother, always with a gentle voice, telling stories about the great-grandfather like she was guarding an invisible legacy. He died young, my dear, but he lives in you. He was strong not because he wasn't afraid. He was strong because he chose to love, even with fear. Maybe she never really understood the weight of those words until now. Because there, sitting in front of that gravestone, with the letter in her hands and the weight of her soul on her shoulders, Sophia began to understand. Her great-grandfather's courage wasn't about weapons. It was about surrender, about meaning, about faith. And she, who had been running from her own questions, was beginning to see an answer. Not the one she expected, but the one she needed. A gentle breeze blew, almost like a caress. She looked up at the sky, then at the letter, and whispered to herself, tears still in her eyes. Maybe, falling isn't the end. Maybe it's the beginning of something. The words of the letter echoed like a persistent whisper in Sophia's mind. It wasn't just the voice of a man who died more than 100 years ago. It felt like it was her own soul trying to remember who she was before everything started to fall apart. And suddenly everything made sense. Her great-grandfather's war had bullets, trenches, and borders. Hers was made of silence. She stayed there for a few more minutes, looking at the medallion in her hands. That cold, old object seemed to have crossed time not just as a memory, but as a compass. And as she stared at it, flashes of her own life started playing like a badly edited movie. Disconnected scenes but filled with pain. The past months had no bombs or sirens. But they had sleepless nights staring at the ceiling, a heart racing for no clear reason, and a constant feeling of failure that weighed down even the simplest actions. She remembered the last time she canceled plans with friends. She said she was tired, but the truth was she couldn't fake a smile. She remembered the times she opened and closed her laptop countless times, unable to write a single line. And the mornings when she looked in the mirror and didn't recognize her own face. The blank stare, the slumped shoulders, the silent voice even when there was so much to say. The world didn't see it, but she knew. She was at war. She pulled the letter from her pocket again and read it aloud, almost like a prayer. The battlefield is dirty, cruel, but that's where the seeds of courage grow. If you ever feel like you've fallen, look to the sky. You're still alive. That's already a miracle. It was like a beam of light cutting through the darkness. That sentence didn't just touch her. It lit something inside her. It wasn't about winning. It was about continuing. About holding on even when everything seemed meaningless. About remembering that there was still breath, still life, still time. She pulled out an old notebook from her bag, her journal. The worn cover hid pages filled during moments of despair, unanswered questions, unnamed pain. And on that blank page, for the first time in a long time, the words came clearly. I've fallen, but I'm still alive. She closed the notebook slowly, like sealing a pact with her own soul. The air felt lighter in her lungs. Then she stood up, holding the letter, the medallion, and that new feeling she didn't yet have a name for. Maybe hope. She walked a few steps through the field of gravestones until she saw a little girl standing in front of one of the stones, holding a red poppy. She looked about 8 years old, her hair in 2 braids and eyes steady. Sophia watched, touched by the scene. The girl knelt down, gently placed the flower, and whispered something the wind didn't let her hear. Moved by something deeper than curiosity, Sophia approached and gently asked, "Was he your grandfather?" The girl looked up without hesitation and replied in a sweet, steady voice. "He was my dad, but he taught me that heroes don't disappear. They become roads." The walk back felt different. It wasn't that the cemetery had changed, or that the sky was clearer. It was her. Inside something had shifted. The pain was still there, but no longer as a paralyzing weight. Now it was a living, pulsing memory, something that hurt but also pushed her forward. In the car, with the medallion around her neck and the letter folded in her pocket, Sophia looked out the window as if watching not the world, but herself beginning to breathe again. That night, after so long in silence, she decided to write. But not in the journal, not hidden behind words no one would read. For the first time, she felt she needed to share what she had lived. She opened her phone, went on social media, and with still shaky fingers, typed a sentence that seemed to come straight from her soul. Falling isn't the end. It's where the most powerful new beginnings start. She posted it without overthinking. Just let the seed fly. Minutes later, responses started to come in. A few likes, then comments, and then direct messages. I needed this today. I cried reading your post. You're not alone. People who, like her, carried silent wars and just needed a sign that there was still a path. Sophia cried. But now it was a different kind of tear. Not from collapse, from connection. For the first time, she felt she didn't need to hide her flaws. That falling didn't make her weak, it made her human, and somehow closer to others. And to God. The following weekend, she visited her grandmother. Something else she had let go of in recent months, caught up in her own emptiness. They sat together on the living room couch, cups of tea in hand and memories spread on the table. They laughed at old stories, cried over forgotten memories, and recalled her great-grandfather with a new tenderness. Her grandmother held the medallion between her fingers, moved. He always said that, if he could, he'd leave something for those who came after him. Looks like he did. Sophia just nodded, eyes full of tears. That presence, once so distant in time, was now company. An invisible guide. Breath of life. The next day, she returned to the cemetery. But this time she didn't bring just one poppy. She brought many. She placed one on her great-grandfather's grave, then on other anonymous ones. On each, she left a small folded paper, with a gentle verse, a phrase of courage, a reminder that no one is ever truly alone. You are loved. There's still time. Falling isn't the end. It was like each flower, each message, was a silent prayer planted there for someone to find at the right time. And even without knowing who would read them, she knew it made sense. Spirituality wasn't a struggle now, nor a theory. It was breath. It was presence. It was like her great-grandfather, even in silence, was still saying, "Keep going. You're not lost." Back at home, she sat at the table, opened a new notebook, with a simple cover, but pages that smelled like a fresh start, and with a steadier hand than ever wrote. Chapter 1. For the ones who fell and thought they'd never rise again. The field was vast, peaceful, covered in golden tones of late afternoon. Sophia walked slowly, her feet touching the grass like they were touching memories. In her hands, she carried a small bouquet of red poppies, not bought, but picked from her own garden, now blooming in her grandmother's backyard. Each flower had meaning. Each petal was a memory turned into a symbol. She walked in silence, but inside, a new sound filled her soul. It wasn't loud. It was like the sound of roots growing underground, quiet and steady. She didn't need answers for everything anymore. Because now she knew. Her pain hadn't been wasted. It had been a seed. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory, soft like the wind. Your courage doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be yours. And that was exactly it. Sophia wasn't perfect. Never was. But now she understood that God doesn't ask for perfection. He blooms through what's broken, through what's human, through what keeps moving forward even when hurt. At the garden, she knelt by the small patch she had prepared, dug with her hands, simple, light, and planted the poppies like planting memory and hope at the same time. It was more than a gesture. It was a promise, a silent pact with everything she had lived, and everything still to come. The camera might show only her hands pressing the soil, while the narration flowed like a prayer. Some names stay forever carved in stone, but their courage blooms in the hearts that choose not to give up. She stood up slowly, wiping her hands on her jeans, and looked at the sky. She felt the sun warming her face and closed her eyes for a moment. Breathe deeply. There were still scars, but now they didn't scream. They spoke. They were part of the story, not the end of it. At the end of that afternoon, Sophia returned once more to the cemetery. Not as someone looking for meaning, but as someone who found purpose in the silence. She sat before her great-grandfather's tomb and tenderly left a new note against the stone. On it, she wrote with the same steadiness she now felt in her heart. Your fall taught my soul how to rise. Thank you. The words were left there like invisible flowers, scenting time with gratitude. And maybe you reading this now are down too. Maybe you think you've failed, that there's no way forward. But listen carefully. If you're still breathing, there's still time to begin again. You're not broken. You're being replanted. If this story spoke to you, subscribe to the Living Hope channel. And share it with someone else who needs to remember that even from the deepest fall, God can make a new beginning bloom.